Hello everybody and welcome to Every Movie Ever. This is of course the show where we're reviewing every movie ever made, starting today with Copycat. Now this is a movie I had never seen before. I suppose I had vaguely heard of it, wasn't really sure what it was until it showed up in the old Netflix library the other day. I was clicking through looking for a movie to watch and I happened to see this one, and here's what caught me right away. Not only does this movie star Sigourney Weaver, one of my personal favorite actresses, it also stars Holly Hunter, another one of my personal favorite actresses, in a let's hunt down a serial killer type movie. Folks, I was stunned. How have I never seen Copycat before? And the answer is, because Copycat is what it says on the tin. It is very much copycat. In this case, copying Silence of the Lambs. This is very much a meh Silence of the Lambs knockoff movie where they've essentially taken Jodie Foster and then they've put another Jodie Foster in the movie, as Sigourney Weaver plays a woman who profiles and writes about serial killers, so that she's sort of the good guy version of a Hannibal Lecter. Instead of being in prison, she finds herself homebound, having suffered trauma at the hands of almost being killed by a serial killer herself years later. Holly Hunter then is the regular Jodie Foster, working as the police officer trying to solve this series of serial murders that, within the context of the movie, are all copycat murders of other serial killers. It is an okay movie. It is not particularly good. While it does have a terrific cast, beyond even just those two leads, they don't really get a lot of compelling stuff to do. The only other thing that makes this movie of note is that it's an early-ish 90s movie, and Sigourney Weaver, since she is homebound, spends a lot of time on the internet, so you get to see a lot of real cheesy 90s chat room graphics of people making internet video that don't have any idea what the internet actually looked like at the time. So, you know, okay movie, Copycat, 3 stars. And now it's time for another installment of our continuing series that I don't have a bumper package for, but maybe I should make one. Movies I saw on an airplane. In this case, I Feel Pretty, the recent Amy Schumer comedy. This one had gotten a fair amount of negative attention in the press before it came out, since the premise revolves around Amy Schumer suddenly deciding that she is a super attractive, like supermodel type, after getting bonked in the noggin. Obviously not the greatest message to send home. It's a weird movie. It's an okay movie to watch on the plane. There are very funny moments in it, and certainly the saving grace of the picture is Amy Schumer. She is a very fine comic performer and actress, and she acquits herself pretty well here, as does Michelle Williams, playing a sort of a woman. She runs a fashion magazine, and Michelle Williams seems vapid on the surface, but is actually very intelligent and somewhat deep, if a little bit disconnected from the needs of regular women. And of course, Amy Schumer starts working at the magazine to help turn things around. Of course, the movie does have that wonky premise. Amy Schumer needing a bump on the noggin to find herself attractive and worthwhile is a difficult hill to overcome, and while it does lead to some comic moments, it is more than a little cringe-inducing, especially because, for no particular reason, Amy Schumer's character turns real mean near the end of the thing, as her newfound perceived hotness makes her decide to be mean to her friends and alienate them and whatnot. This movie is a difficult pill to swallow at many times. Certainly a movie that it's hard to believe came out in 2018, but not entirely without merit. 2.5 stars. Now it's time for a Hollywood classic. This week on Hollywood Classics, we're going to look at the Lady Vanishes. This is a very early Hitchcock movie. In fact, Hitch's last movie he made as a British filmmaker before coming to America to work for the American motion picture studios. This is one that I had seen before, although not for a long time. For a while, because of weird international copyright laws, this one was in the public domain, and so it was very easy to see and get a hold of. That has since changed, and like I say, I have not seen it in quite a while, and it was nice to revisit it in a nice copy of it. One of the problems with those public domain movies is that oftentimes you're watching a very lousy looking copy, but this one was suitably HD'd and whatnot. Lady Vanishes is a highly entertaining comic mystery starring Margaret Lockwood, a popular British actress of the day who has, I don't suppose it's fair to call her forgotten now, but certainly she's not well remembered amongst the general public, which is a shame because she really has the chops, particularly for this more sort of light-hearted mystery. The plot, such as it is, revolves around Margaret Lockwood is heading back to England from some European, ill-defined European country on a train, and the old lady who she happens to share her train compartment with suddenly goes missing. No one believes Margaret Lockwood that the lady was even on the train, but slowly but surely she and her friends uncover a conspiracy to kidnap the elderly woman, all while there are a variety of eccentric characters hanging around the train. If you can think of a campier version of Murder on the Orient Express, you'll have some idea of The Lady Vanishes. This is terrific Hitchcock. It's not quite him at the height of his powers, which in its way makes it more interesting as you're seeing him really come into those powers. Terrific film, 4 stars. Back in the 80s, Walt Disney Pictures was having a heck of a time. And by 80s, I suppose I also mean the late 70s. Walt had passed away, and the studio was having a great deal of trouble finding its roots. And certainly one of the things that was very popular in the 70s was Star Wars, which means that Disney wanted to take their own attempt at making a movie that we can only place in a category we call spaced out. Yes, today's Spaced Out, we are talking about that Disney pseudo-classic, The Black Hole, a movie that I had certainly heard about because of its part in helping to cripple the fortunes at Disney. This was a very expensive feature that did not make a big return on investment and was indeed Disney's attempt to knock off Star Wars. I had seen maybe the first 10 or 15 minutes of it before back in the day on the old video discs. And here's the thing. Video disc is a medium that I have a lot of love for, as it's the home video medium that I grew up with. However, it is lousy. It is notoriously bad looking. And so that didn't help this movie, because the thing that Black Hole has the most going for is its visuals. I happened to see this on Turner Classic. It was introduced by Leonard Maltin as part of his continuing series of looking at more obscure Disney fare, and he talked about the feel of the movie, and I have to agree with him. That this movie feels very much like a 50s science fiction movie, which is, I think, the problem with it. Looking at it today, that doesn't really matter, right? Looking at it all these decades later, who cares if this movie, if you like a 50s movie, who cares if it feels like a 50s movie? But if you're watching this in the late 70s, early 80s, no doubt this movie feels enormously retrograde. So what do I mean by a 50s movie? Well, I mean, Black Hole really feels like Forbidden Planet. And Forbidden Planet is honestly one of my all-time favorite pictures. This isn't quite up to that level of Forbidden Planet, regardless of when it was made, but has that same sort of space explorers, kind of high-mindedness and scienciness, coming across a deluded scientist. It's a mad scientist movie. It's a mad scientist haunted house movie, but set in space. So a very 50s idea. Black Hole, however, is enhanced then by top-notch late 70s, early 80s special effects. And while the special effects in Forbidden Planet, for example, are a classic, a lot of those 50s movies don't have that. Black Hole has it in spades. So this is, if not a well-told story, a tremendous looking story. It's very entertaining. I also very much like the robots in this. Certainly an area where Disney felt like they could knock off Star Wars was with a pair of super cute robots voiced by the likes of Roddy McDowall and Slim Pickens. So you got a robot, well, this is more of a Mr. Haney, but you know what I'm talking about, flying around and talking like he's from the South. The movie also has an extremely surreal finale that kind of needs to be seen to be believed. And of course, there are also the threatening robots. Maximilian, pretty good robot. So Black Hole, real mixed bag. You notice I haven't talked about the human characters. That's because they are a real shrug. But still, Black Hole is a very mixed bag that because it was so entertaining, it's getting that extra little notch to make it 3.5 stars. Take cover! It's an action explosion! This week on the Action Explosion, we are looking at the aptly titled Action Jackson. Again, a movie that if you were trolling the video stores throughout the 90s as I was, you saw Action Jackson on the shelf. And let me tell you something, here it is, the year of our Lord 2018. And I am kicking myself that I never picked Action Jackson up off the shelf. Why? It was tremendous. I'm a big fan of 80s actioners, and while I have my favorites, there's certainly this sort of mid-level 80s actioner that is a ton of fun. And oftentimes you find yourself going to see modern pictures, like The Meg would be a good example of this, hoping for that taste of 80s action. And here in Action Jackson, what I found was that movie, was a pure 80s action spectacle of a very high quality that I had blissfully never seen before. Additionally, this movie stars Carl Weathers, known now for his comic appearances in Arrested Development, for having played Apollo Creed in the Rocky series, and to me personally as being one half of the most awesome handshake in cinematic history. Action Jackson is like seeing a movie from an alternate reality where Carl Weathers is as big a movie star as Stallone or Schwarzenegger. It really is. Like, this is because Carl Weathers is the star of this thing, and he is bringing it. Like the star power and the sheer muscularity that he's bringing to this thing, the one-liners, the whole shebang really makes me wish that there were more Carl Weathers action pictures. Give me an Action Jackson 2, give me something. This movie is muscular, it's dumb, it features an often super-powered lead character, so it puts it solidly in the Commando school of action movies. But if you were like me, you know that is very much a compliment. Action Jackson, terrific movie, also a movie where you get to watch Coach do karate. Really fun. Never seen it, please do. 3.5 stars. Now it's time for Calling All Horror Hounds. This week we're taking a look at sort of the new hotness of horror movies, the one that the public is all excited about. This is A Quiet Place, directed by John Krasinski of The Office. This is the one where a family is surviving in a post-apocalyptic world where aliens have landed on Earth or crashed on Earth or whatever, monsters. And these monsters have super hearing, and if you make any noise, they will show up and kill you. So the human population has been largely destroyed. John Krasinski and his family, which includes the always terrific Emily Blunt, his real-life spouse, are living out in the country and spending day by day trying not to make any noise, a premise that is hit home by an introductory scene wherein somebody done makes a noise and things get rough. This was a solid movie. It's a solid movie. I see why people liked it. It's certainly a high concept picture. Don't make any noise, right? It also co-stars Millicent Simmons as their daughter, who is hearing impaired. Turns out Millicent Simmons is an actually hearing impaired actress, and she did a really great job. I want to give her a huge shout out. John Krasinski not coming across as good in this movie. Oftentimes his scenes, one in particular toward the end, feel very self-aggrandizing and self-serving, which is a disappointment. I have to be honest, I did not have a real high opinion of John Krasinski going into this movie. Never liked him on The Office. And it's not really made better here. You know, as the writer and the director, it's sort of a shame that he often throws the spotlight on himself in a weird way. It's a great idea for a movie and for a creature. The problem I have with it, the other problem I have with it, is that much like Signs, you have here a creature that seems to me to be fatally flawed in a way that makes it too easy to dispatch. Now, our heroes don't figure out how to dispatch the creature until the third act, but when they do, it's through a method that I found myself saying, the Army didn't try this? It seems pretty obvious to me. But what are you going to do? A Quiet Place, still pretty good. 3.5 stars. Now it's time for the worst of the week. This week's worst of the week can only be Destination Wedding, a movie that stars Keanu Reeves and Winona Ryder in what has to be described as the ultimate two-hander. Why do I say this? Because Destination Wedding is not just a movie that stars Winona and Keanu. It stars them to the exclusion of all others. Yes, Winona and Keanu have the only two speaking roles in this entire movie. This movie is 90 minutes of Keanu Reeves and Winona Ryder talking to each other as a pair of narcissist misanthropes, try saying that 3 times fast, I couldn't do it once, who have been barely invited to a wedding, meet each other, and then spend the next hour and a half sort of connecting, but mostly complaining about everyone around them. It's a weird movie, and one could see, you know, the satirical possibilities of it, but they never quite work out for me. Sort of outside of the bizarre spectacle of watching this movie that seems like a joke almost, like that you would be sitting around kidding and you'd be like, what about this as a movie? Is the idea, when watching it, do yourself a favor and think about, what if this movie is a prequel to John Wick? What if Keanu is actually playing John Wick here? It's not hard to believe that the narcissist he plays here is actually a secret assassin. And this is how he meets the wife who's dead by the beginning of John Wick. It's possible and makes it a little bit more fun to watch. Otherwise, Destination Wedding, there's not a lot to say about because there's not a lot to hear. 2 stars. It's time for the best of the bunch. Oh, folks. Oh, folks. I saw Halloween. Let me tell you something. I was unsure of what to make of this latest Halloween sequel, pseudo reboot, because the deal is this one's a sequel to the original Halloween, but it ignores all the in-between Halloweens, but who really cares, and et cetera, et cetera. Directed by, David Gordon Green. I think that's right. And co-written with Danny McBride. This new version of Halloween, who knew what to make of it, right? It's set now. We're bringing back the terrific Jamie Lee Curtis. Michael Myers has been in prison for all of these years. Wait, no. Michael Myers, thank you, has been in prison for all of these years, or psychiatric institution or whatever. Meanwhile, Jamie Lee Curtis has been readying herself for the day when Michael inevitably escapes because she wants to hunt him down and kill that sucker. This movie, I was hooked from the beginning. It's a very involving movie with terrific action. It has some great sequences. It is in many ways the anti-slasher. If you have been watching this show for the past several weeks, you know that I have not only recently come around to the original Halloween, which I always liked, but finally understand to be the classic that it is. You know that I've also been revisiting the Friday the 13th movies and finding them wanting. I am not a big fan of the slasher, which helps to make this 2018 version of Halloween perfect for me. Now, there is some stalking and slashing. Don't feel like you're not going to get to see Michael brutally and wonderfully dispatch some folks in this. You are. And it's pretty good. But that is not the central focus. The focus here really is on Jamie Lee Curtis and her extended family, including her daughter Judy Greer, who is, this might be Judy Greer's best movie by a long shot. I don't want to get too much into it. And then Judy Greer's daughter, who is also tremendous. Here's the thing, and a big part of the reason why I call this as an anti-slasher has to do with the ending. And I do not want to give the ending away, because this movie had like the most fist-pumping, get-up-and-cheer ending with some amazing moments for Jamie Lee and for Judy that I am so excited about. I was so excited about the end of this movie, and the end of this movie really sets it home as reversing the formula. And in a lot of ways, but one of the key ways, the slasher movie, Jason, Michael, whoever it is, sort of becomes the de facto hero. You're, in a weird way, you're rooting for the next kill. This movie very effectively turns that whole idea on its head and makes us root and cheer for Jamie Lee and Judy in a tremendous way. Again, I don't want to give too much away. I may be doing a disservice to the movie in not telling you about that ending that I love so much, but I do not want to ruin it for you. Please go out and see Halloween. I enjoyed the heck out of it. 4 big stars. That is going to do it for this episode of Every Movie Ever. Thank you so much for watching. Be sure to join us next week as we will keep trying to review every movie ever made. And don't forget to visit our website, northmetrotv.com/everymovieever. There, you can watch reviews of every movie we've ever covered here on the show, as well as complete episodes. That's northmetrotv.com/everymovieever.